Okay, I think
okay.
we are live now.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Great.
Perfect. We'll give it a couple of minutes to let people join.
I can see the numbers building up there.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. See. Okay, I think we can get started while people start joining. So first of all, hi to everybody and welcome to our roundtable discussion. My name is Paula and I'm the program coordinator who oversees the delivery of our Level 9 postgraduate certificate in innovation and enterprise development here at Tangent Trinity's Ideas Workspace. And we are here today to hear our panelists' take on the role of and the importance of human innovation in the era of AI. So our panelists joining today are Ken Finnegan, Chris Fogarty, and Jess Hayden, who is going to be joining us in a few minutes, but she'll be here soon. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. So Ken, would you like to go first?
Hello, everybody. Ken Finnegan here. I'm the CEO of Tangent, Trinity's Ideas Workspace. I'm delighted to be here to talk about artificial intelligence. It's a little bit pet subject of mine. I've in a previous life, before Tangent and before Trinity, I was a chief technology advisor in IDA Ireland, and I had the responsibility for developing a national proposition for Ireland in artificial intelligence. Which I'm delighted has been used as a proposition around the world to attract foreign direct investment into Ireland. So Ireland is an incredible country in terms of what is our talent, I guess, is like in the companies that are based here. Having worked in IDA and having seen the success of foreign direct investment of companies and the job creation from this work, I decided that I wanted to work with the kernel of ideas, with individuals who had just ideas in terms of wanting to set up their own businesses or maybe create new innovative solutions and products in their own companies. So then I joined Tangent and Trinity. So I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion, and hopefully I can bring a kind of like a unique perspective to the conversation, combining the work from IDA and also talking about the programs that we run in Tangent. So looking forward to it, Paula.
Thank you very much, Ken. Chris, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paula. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Fogarty, and I am Innovation Hubs Manager for County Kildare. So one of the primary hubs that I manage is Merits, the Mid-East Regional Innovation Think Space based in Naas. And I'm delighted that we have partnered with Tangent and Trinity College to deliver the Innovation and Enterprise Development Programme earlier this year and again next year, because a huge amount of the work that we do, both in Merits and in our sister hub, which is the National Equine Innovation Centre, really revolves around innovation and basically tech startup companies. So quite similar to what Ken just mentioned, a lot of my experience and a lot of the experience of the innovation hubs in Kildare is that we work with tech startup companies. So from that very seed idea through the ideation phase and the implementation and the commercialization of a tech idea, and a huge number of the companies that we work with at the moment, be they one woman or one man bands or, growing and scaling companies, a huge number of them are involved in the artificial intelligence space. More to the point, the application of AI to commercial challenges, in real world situations. So it's something that's very topical at the moment. It's very topical where I work, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Perfect. So thank you, Chris. In a few minutes, as I said, we're going to have Jess Hayden joining us. She's an academic lead and facilitator here at Tangent, and she's also the co-founder of the Brave Lab. So to our audience who are joining us here today, if you have any questions, feel free to send your questions to the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address them at the end of the discussion, if that's okay. All right, we're good to start. Perfect, let's go. So I know that nowadays there's a certain anxiety around AI. Like, will it make humanity obsolete? Is it going to replace me? Is it going to replace my job? So there's a lot of conversations about that in the moment. So in this context, how do you think we can harness the potential of AI to complement or to amplify human innovation rather than replace it? Ken, would you like to go first?
Sure. And I think what I might do to answer this question is probably give some of the examples of some of the startups that we've supported and the individuals that we've supported in Tangent. But maybe first to address the kind of like the concerns, I guess, of people. I'm a big believer that AI, just like when electricity was discovered, yes, it disrupted jobs, but it created a lot more. And I think actually it's like the OECD have published papers stating around 75 million jobs will be affected by artificial intelligence, but another 135 million will be created. So I think there's a net positive in terms of job creation when it comes to artificial intelligence, or at least that's what the experts are saying in the global organizations. How do we, to Chris's point earlier on, it's like, how do we apply AI to kind of like everyday solutions? You know, really understanding what the challenges are out there. So everybody in employment, everybody in life, we all understand and can get frustrated on a daily basis with different challenges that face us, whether they're professional challenges or whether they're personal challenges. And it's actually, if you're thinking from a innovative perspective, you can look to some of these technologies and go like, actually, how about if I apply artificial intelligence to this challenge? Is there an opportunity there, you know? And I think this is the mindset that we have to encourage, and this is the mindset that we do encourage in Tangent, I guess. Is like, instead of looking at something as a big kind of unknown and being scared of disruptive technology or being scared of something, actually to conquer that fear is like to just get to know it, right? And years ago, I remember somebody as making the comparison between electricity. You know, I don't know how electricity, well, how it's created. You know, I don't know. I'm not an electrician or electrical engineer, but I know that the application of electricity has changed the world. You know, so it's the same with AI. So a lot of people will come to us in Tangent and go, do we teach AI, or are our programs AI focused? And I'm kind of going, absolutely. We don't actually teach kind of like the technology of AI, but we're teaching those skills that will help you and empower you and develop the confidence to look at and research and understand what AI means to you in your industry. And then, given your expertise or given your background, it's like, how can you apply AI to those potential challenges, or augment artificial intelligence with some of the challenges you have in your professional life. Some examples that have passed through Tangent over the past few years, and there's some really nice ones here as well. So one company that's going from strength to strength is a student startup called Weave. So I can't remember what they were called when they were with us. But what Weave do is they're using artificial intelligence to weave in foreign language words into English books or into English kind of like publication. So for example, if you wanted to read Hard Times and you wanted to learn Spanish at the same time, it weaves one word into the sentence in Spanish, so you can actually learn the language as you read the book. Only last week they released a not a web browser, but an attachment for a web browser, where websites now, I read The Guardian every morning just to see what's going on in the world, and there's an attachment on the website, from Weave, and now it weaves one Spanish word into every sentence when I read it. So that's a really nice application, for example, of artificial intelligence. One of our, and that's kind of like, I guess it's like, so you're looking at kind of like education there, right? The education sector, another kind of like sector that one of our startups from a couple of years back, Zavatar, they're in the entertainment industry, and they've created an entire kind of like AI based platform where you have panelists. So the panelists are avatars. So instead of seeing me, you see avatars, an avatar of me on the screen. And those guys based down in Killorglin in County Kerry are going from strength to strength as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Sorry.
one more kind of like really interesting one, and she's not necessarily, she's not a graduate of Tangent. She's my next door neighbor. she's a photographer, and she's been really worried about kind of like, it's like, if anybody has been looking at kind of like the impact onto the creative industries, now there's an application, a platform that is actually generating pictures and like paintings, etc. So as a photographer, she's totally embraced AI, and she's actually published on the front of In Dublin this month, because the skill set she has is around photography. For example, she understands lighting, and now she can speak to the AI with her expertise, and she can build through narrative with the AI pictures that are really unique and really striking, to the point now where she's found in a whole new kind of like sector. And instead of being kind of like adverse to a disruptive technology that technically could cause challenges in the creative space, she's fully embraced it. And now, as I said, she's got a picture on the front of In Dublin magazine this month. So it's a really nice demonstration of that mindset that we try to cultivate. It's like, when something appears on the horizon that seems to be a challenge, or it seems to be scary, or seems to be unconquerable, actually, if you look at it, if you examine it and look upon it as an opportunity as opposed to something negative. And these are the skills that we embed in our students. It's like, it's embrace the challenge, and you will find opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really good examples of how AI actually complements and enhances human creativity and innovation, other than like replace it, which is, as when we started saying like, oh my God, is it going to replace me? No, it can actually make your work even more unique, if you know how to harness that power. So that's really great. So hi Jess, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be here.
Good. So I gave a brief introduction on who you are before you joined. So we're going to move on now, so we'll talk about the next question. You and Chris can give your thoughts. So we are in an era that, as we're saying, is dominated by AI driven solutions. People are going to AI to, write me this text or make me a meal plan or something like that. So in this context, what do you think are the unique and the unique capabilities that humans bring to the innovation process? And in an organizational context, how can businesses and organizations cultivate these capabilities? So Jess, would you like to go next?
Yeah, Phil, thanks. I love this question because I think one of the things we teach on all of the programs that we work on in Tangent is this kind of building this capacity to look beyond the obvious. And intelligent automation or artificial intelligence systems, they've been trained on stuff we've already done in the world. So yes, maybe they'll find patterns that we won't have seen, or they'll prompt kind of newer thinking. But really, when it comes to like connecting things that have never been connected before, or mash up ideas, or taking a new lens or a new perspective on something, humans, I think, are probably not going to be matched for a very long time in that kind of ability. So I think there's like, yes, we can draw inspiration from some of the stuff. Before this panel today, I was on ChatGPT and I asked it, how can humans build a fairer future? And it was amazing what I got. I got like a 10-point plan for, you know, how we can fix the world in under a second. It's really amazing. But there's stuff that, you know, I was like, yeah, I would have thought of that myself. And there's other stuff that I thought, okay, actually, I've never thought about that before. And it was a prompt for me. And I think that's a really great way to harness it, you know. And when we look at what's just happened in LA with the ending of the writers' strike, the deal that was made there is really, really interesting, because what the writers managed to do, fair play to them, was take back control of their ownership of the process. They can't lose a credit now for using AI. They are in charge of when IA gets used and how, and they can use it to harness and supplement their work and so on, but they still get their writer's credit, which is the most important thing to them. And I think that's showing us this like, that's the difference that we can make. It's an inspirational tool, but it's also potentially a tool to help us deal with overwhelm, where we're dealing with like lots of information that a human brain can't possibly ever compute. That's where intelligent automation comes in and makes our lives easier. I think, Ken, I came in just as I think you were talking about that kind of stuff, the tasks we don't really enjoy doing because they're just too psychologically expensive. Great, let's get a machine to help us with that, and leave our kind of pattern matching ability to what we put on top of that.
Very good. Yeah, I think you're touching on a point there that says that we're using AI to fulfill certain needs that we have, you know, that we might not, we don't really want to do them, but so we can kind of outsource it to these AI softwares. So how do you think a more how can a more human-centered design ensure that AI innovations are aligned with the needs of society? Are the things, how can we see like this is actually what society needs? So Chris, do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, interesting question, Paula, and similar, I suppose, echoing somewhat what Ken and Jess have mentioned already. For me, it's all about augmented intelligence. You know, I think that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I think it really just summarizes and captures how we should view the application of artificial intelligence. You know, there can be a bit of anxiety around, you know, what's it going to do? What does it mean for me and my job and for work in general? But as Ken mentioned, you know, with electricity or with the Industrial Revolution, you know, for the amount of jobs that are affected potentially negatively, I think the opportunities created, you know, are exponential, you know, and it's all about the application. It's how do you use artificial intelligence to augment what you're doing already? So, for example, when you talk about human-centered design, like there are certain capabilities that are difficult to reflect in artificial intelligence. You've really got to have human intelligence, you know, to apply the AI. For example, creativity, emotional intelligence. One that really jumps out is kind of complex decision making. So you can, you know, while you can use artificial intelligence to compute massive amounts of data, you know, for data analysis. For example, in Merits, we're working with a company at the moment who are working on fraud detection using artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence is just being used for the number crunching, you know, the huge database to be crunched, you know, and analyzed, and still the machine, as we'll call it, still has to refer for human intervention to say, look, I think I've detected fraud. Now it's over to you. So yeah, complex problem solving. The huge one really is in healthcare, for example. You know, a lot of people, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of debate in recent years around the use of AI in healthcare and medical diagnostics, you know, where people are saying, oh, well, you can't teach a machine to diagnose medical conditions or challenges like that. And I think, yes, you know, with the application, when you talk about, you know, the values and the needs of society, like when it comes to healthcare, I think that's a really it's obviously a very personal topic to people. You know, everybody's obviously engaged and interested in their healthcare and the provision of it. But I think in that instance, AI can be used obviously for data processing and for analysis, and then refer to the human for the experience, you know, and for the decision making.
Yes, that's a really good point, which takes me to my next question, which is about upskilling the workforce, because there could be people that's their job to do, like maybe like the busy work and the crunchy of the numbers and all of that. So if that can be done by AI now, what are some effective upskilling strategies that businesses can adopt to help their staff in this transition moment? Ken, would you like to jump in on that one?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. And it's our raison d'etre, you know, it's why Tangent exists, you know, enhancing and developing kind of like people's creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurial skill sets. You know, there's you kind of asked the question from a business perspective, but I think it's kind of like, if we bring it down to the human as well, at the individual, it's like it's something that businesses, but also individuals, and I know many people on this call probably are self-motivated and interested in participating on a program, not because they're being forced to by their organization, but because they have the ambition to kind of like stay on top of things, and they have the attitude to kind of like, let's see what can happen. You know, it's like, let me learn the ability to have an innovative mindset, to learn the kind of like the tools of innovation, how to, what's really important on this program, that we're kind of like talking to, I guess, is, I think it's an incredible foundation, right? So if I speak to business, or if I speak to the individual, it's like, it's about a mindset, you know, or if you're looking at this from a business perspective, a culture within an organization, it's about, are we afraid again of disruptive technologies? Are we scared to kind of like try new things? Are we afraid to fail? Whether it's an organization or an individual, it's like, if that's your mindset, it's like, it's going to happen, you know. It's like, if you're going to run scared, but if you've kind of like have the attitude and the mindset where it's like, actually, do you know what? It's okay to kind of like, I guess, fail. And I hate using the word fail, because it's not necessarily, it's like, it's a really final word, but actually it's failing forward is, I think, the term is a more appropriate term. It's kind of like, let me try something. If that doesn't work, what happened? What can I learn from it? And let me try again, and try it a different way, you know. That's the kind of like the individual approach, if you want. And it takes courage. It's being brave. It's kind of like, I have so much admiration for a lot of our students and learners on our programs, because they are like, come to Tangent with an idea, and what they want from us is to help them build the skill set, build the confidence to be able to pitch that idea, to kind of like put flesh on the bones of those ideas as well, you know. And sometimes those ideas don't work out, you know. Sometimes it's like, okay, you'll go on a journey, and all of a sudden it's like you're kind of like, somebody tells you, and I feel really bad sometimes, especially when we have some of our pitching sessions. It's like, people will share their ideas, and you're kind of going like, you don't want to say it's absolutely awful, but because it's like, that's their idea, that's where they've come from. So you're trying to be kind of like, it's okay, nudge them in the right direction, or nudge them in a different direction. But it takes so much courage and so much bravery to stand up and like expose your mind, you know. It's essentially, that's what's happening when you're sharing your ideas, and you've been on a journey, so you become emotionally attached to that. I guess that's what, from a business perspective, what I'd call culture as well. So some of the most amazing businesses, big and small, are those organizations that embrace that idea of, let's just give it a go, you know. And if it fails, actually what we'll do is, now I know it's like, celebrate failure is a bit of a cliche, but actually there's a way to celebrate failure, but that rewards and recognizes people for taking a chance, you know. And there's ways to take a chance that doesn't have massive financial or reputational impact on organizations. So you can kind of like create an innovative culture within your organization, and develop your people. And I think, to do that, I'll always say, it begins with skills, it begins with education. Education is a great equalizer. And maybe just to give an example of that, we had a student on this exact program 2 years ago. She is somebody who I've known for a couple of years, and she worked as a graphic designer. She got laid off from her job, and she was kind of like, what am I going to do next, right? So she'd spent the past 20 years working as a graphic designer in an educational publishing company, and her skill set, you know, probably the reason why they were laying off people is because the technology came along and disrupted kind of like the traditional kind of graphic design skills, if you want. So she came to Tangent, participated in this program, developed, and actually one thing that she said to me, she said, I've never presented in front of people before in my life. She'd been behind a machine and she'd been graphic designing her entire life. And she was so nervous getting up in front of people, pitching her idea, pitching her portfolio. She had an amazing portfolio as well. So she learned those kind of like, I guess, effective communication, collaboration, those transversal skills that are part of our program. And that was the foundations that gave her the confidence. She was like, you'll always see it in Tangent, and I love our programs for this. People will walk in kind of like a little bit kind of like nervous. It might be kind of like the average age of a postgraduate in our programs is 46 years old. Many of them haven't been back to college in 20 plus years, you know, so coming back to college can be a nerve-wracking experience. But they come in, they're a little bit nervous, and 6 months later, walking out, shoulders back, head held high, going like, I've had an idea, I've learned the skills, I know how to pitch my idea. If they don't like it, that's on them. And it's like, this is kind of like this is how I pitch myself. And now she's working as a UI engineer in one of the largest global multinationals for education publications in the world. So it's just a wonderful story of kind of like, our programs aren't just about, I guess, entrepreneurship. It's the entrepreneurial mindset. You don't need to leave and feel that you have to have a company at the end of it. You participate on the program, you learn the skills of innovation, problem definition, you learn how to pitch the idea, you learn how to collaborate with different disciplines, people from different backgrounds, and through all of that you gain that confidence. And confidence is the biggest thing that I think is like people on our programs gain from our programs, whether they're individuals personally driven or whether they're in their organizations. They go back to their organizations and kind of go like, I got this.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do at Tangent is exactly to empower through building confidence, right? So that's one of our goals there. And it's interesting that you mention, you know, learning from your setbacks and your failures, because innovation involves a lot of risk taking and learning from failure. Like if you're afraid to make mistakes, it's very hard to innovate, right? You need to kind of trust the process and throw yourself into it. But then on the other hand, like coming back to AI technologies, they tend to favor risk mitigation and predictability and safety and how can we make sure this works, right? So how do you think our organizations can foster a culture that encourages experimentation and innovation when we have AI saying, oh no, this is the way to do it, and it's kind of like a less risky way to innovate? So how can we strike that balance? Jess, would you like to jump into that one?
Yeah, I suppose like with anything where we want to see people, you know, pushing against a boundary or testing out what could change, what should change, and how might we change it. We encourage people to take in as wide a perspective as possible, right? Because every time we're changing something, we have an opportunity to make things fairer, make them better, make them work for more people. So these concepts around universal design. So I think where again, it's a question of like harnessing it, right? We're always, when we're changing something, we're always in danger of creating unintended consequences, things that really the best minds in the world won't have seen coming. And I think there's a brilliant opportunity there to get our machines to help us maybe think about that. They're really good at predicting stuff. They're really good at like game theory and crunching numbers. So maybe here's what we're planning on doing. What if we make a change here in this complex system? What might happen? And I think I think Chris was saying earlier, like where they're not good at making the complex decision, like this is the one thing you should do. They're good at saying, look, here are all the things that might happen, right? So that's something that's really, really useful. Humans tend to have limits to their ability to predict different possible outcomes. And it's just, you know, it's just a factor of how we've evolved. And we can do some of it for sure. And some people can do a lot of it, but it tends to be a kind of a rare ability that people have. But that's something that machines could help us be safer with that. Mm-hmm. Where though that can go wrong is you can use it. It can go in the wrong hands, right? And you can do the opposite. You can get a machine to help you think of all of the negative consequences that you could potentially aim to achieve with something. And that's where, you know, I do believe that this technology will continue to evolve. It will continue to, you know, move through the market. There'll be a time when, like, you know, there was a time back in the early 90s where we didn't all have phones. There'll be a time right now we're not all using AI. There'll be a time, I think, in a very near future where we're all kind of using it, whether we know it or not, in different parts of our lives. But the bit that I'd be paying the most attention to is how can we make sure that there are ways that the technologies that we're using to create good aren't being used to create harm. And that, it's a massive question, but again, that's part of our job now. The technology has advanced to a certain degree. We have to take the responsibility to figure out that it's going to be like the balance of how it's going to be used is creating good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now, since we're looking into the future now, so what do you think are the most promising areas or industries that have a potential for collaboration between human-driven innovation and AI-driven innovation? Where can these two meet? Chris, do you have anything to say there?
Absolutely, Paula. Yeah, I think there are a couple that spring to mind. I already mentioned healthcare. I think there's huge opportunity in healthcare. There's huge opportunity in fintech, you know, in the financial technology space, obviously. But one that maybe doesn't jump off the page for people and is very pertinent to today's conversation is probably education, you know. Ken mentioned earlier a very good example of Weave, and that's a fantastic application of artificial intelligence into education. But I think when you take education as an overall objective, like, you know, effective teaching, it needs adaptability and emotional intelligence and mentorship and things that you can't necessarily program a machine to do. You know, you can achieve levels of it, but yeah, for me, I think there's huge opportunity in education for AI. But you know, it'll get us to a certain level. But then you'll have programs like the programs run at Tangent and various other universities, and they're never going to, insofar as I can tell, you know, you're never going to replicate exactly what you'll achieve on a program like this purely through the use of artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. Ken, would you like to jump in there?
Ken is very keen to come in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great question. Another great question. It's I always joke with respect to different industries, but I always joke if you're wearing a wig or a cloak or a gown, the very traditional sectors tend to be the conservative sectors and less let's say open to change and adoption of new technology. So like education, you know, in our own educational institution, it's 430 years or 431 years old, and it's like there's still a lot of tradition associated with it. I do think that AI and education ripe for disruption, you know. And I know the provost of the university, it's one of her main kind of like areas at the moment, areas of focus, to kind of like, what does a modern university look like with the advent of generative AI and ChatGPT, you know. I'm again, from the conversation you'll probably gather, I'm a big advocate. It's like, as chief technology advisor in IDA, once upon a time, my job was to be very create compelling propositions for organizations to kind of like to get involved in research and development, get involved in innovation, etc. So I always see the opportunity, you know. And I do think that from an education perspective, I don't think we should hide away from ChatGPT. You know, I think actually I've seen some examples where different schools or different organizations are telling their students, like, okay, well, use ChatGPT as the tool, and you'll be graded on how effectively you're using ChatGPT. You know, it's like, as opposed to blocking these tools and pretending that they don't exist, we do have to learn how to use them, because they're being used. You know, students are writing their essays with ChatGPT, and the more you see text from ChatGPT, the more you become kind of like, okay, let's like you recognize generative AI outputs. At the beginning, it was real novel, but then you kind of like notice words that aren't in everyday's vocabulary, and you're kind of going like, all right, there's something going on here. But what I do think, like, as I say, first of all, it's embracing generative AI, and especially in education. Another area actually just that's really interesting, and we've worked with as well, is the legal profession. You know, it's ripe for disruption. Like you go to any courtroom around the country and literally wigs, gowns and robes and very traditional. They still have chalk paintings of kind of like proceedings that are happening in there. But some of the more progressive kind of like large legal organizations, and we've worked with one of them, recognize that this is happening and this is coming. And as opposed to kind of like not acknowledging it, they're taking measures and steps to empower their staff through kind of like through programs that we run. So we've run bespoke programs for them in developing the innovation articulation and tools within that organizations, but pair that with kind of like an understanding of the power of AI, and all of a sudden you've got an entire kind of like workforce who are coming up with brand new ideas in terms of how to create new innovations for their clients, for their customers, etc. And they're putting themselves out in front of every other legal organization in the country. This is true and proper innovation. You know, it's like they've got the competitive advantage, all these kind of like I won't say cliches, but the first mover advantage, etc. So I do think industries and sectors that are very traditional and have been kind of like, you look at them and have been very stagnant, let's say, in terms of we don't do that type of work around here. It's like they're ripe for disruption. Just and my Paula, you know me, it's like at this stage now I will talk about another startup we supported years ago on Launchbox, one of our student startups, and it was they automated Divorce She were their name, and they automated the divorce process. So I think the cost of a divorce in Ireland is between 5,000 and 10,000 euros. But what it is, it's a series of different papers that need to be signed and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, they created leveraging artificial intelligence a process where you can get a divorce for a couple of €100. And
Wow.
I see that, yeah, I see those companies are kind of like on the market at the moment. But it's kind of like it's this disruptive thinking. It's like if you look at the legal sector, it's kind of like a lot of it is kind of like understanding past precedents, laws, etc. So it's a sequence of different things that are required. If you understand that, how do you automate it? How do you leverage artificial intelligence to disrupt an industry? And that's what I mean. It's like, and bringing it back to this there's an analogy of electricity. When electricity was discovered, it was kind of like, okay, well, what can we do with it? And it's like, we all have, every single one of us has some type of challenge, like that we if we actually sat with it for a little while and maybe talked to other people and understood artificial intelligence, we could all be kind of, I don't want to say billionaires over the next couple of years, but actually we could with the right set of tools and the right environment, we could all be creating genuine solutions to challenges, you know.
Absolutely. Yes. Jess, you have your hand up there. Do you want to join in?
I want to add something, because I agree with Chris and Ken. Like there's lots of kind of traditional industries that can be disrupted in loads of ways with AI, but actually there's also another kind of, there's emerging industries where there's a need to act really fast as we possibly can, and climate mitigation is the one that kind of jumps out to me. And what's going to help us make good bets and quickly act on them, I think, is being supported with intelligent automation and massive data sets and very complex kind of patterns, you know. So I actually struggle to think of a industry that can't benefit, you know, from figuring out, as you said, we all have challenges that can probably be solved with machine intelligence, or at least alleviated with machine intelligence. But for me, like where we need the most people taking the most decisive action is in climate mitigation now.
Can I jump in there, Paula? Just it's like
Yeah.
to echo something there as well, and it's not necessarily, well, it's an area, not necessarily a business sector. but policy as well. You know, one of the big challenges actually to coming up with solutions is actually how I guess the speed policy can be changed or policy can be created. And this is where I'm not talking about any sector, I'm talking about government. You know, it's like I hosted a panel conversation last year at some stage, and there was a lot of the tech companies on it, and the biggest challenge that they have is regulation. I know there is a question there from somebody about regulation, but it is how quickly governments can enact and create policy that's supportive, you know, because we can all have the greatest ideas in the world, but if the policy doesn't exist, or if our governments aren't dynamic enough to react to kind of like the speed at which industry is acting, that's kind of like, it's like you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I do think there is a need for greater engagement from governments as well to understand and to support what's happening across different sectors too.
Okay, that was a great discussion. Thank you, everybody. So we do have a few questions from the audience there. So we don't have a lot of time left. I don't think we'll be able to address them all, but let's see how much we can get through. So the first one is asking, do you see any sector that has more resistance to try and use AI? And you might have touched on that, Ken, like you're talking about the ones that are more conservative, you know, like, is there anything you would like to expand on this point?
I don't think so. I think like what my point earlier on is like, are the industries, are the sectors that are kind of like, you know, traditional and conservative, you know, it's like, and even, and I'm not even talking about, like, yes, we talked about legal, we talked about education, but look at what happened to the telecommunications sector over the past 20 years as well. You know, telecommunication companies, I used to work in telecommunications, but telecommunication companies were printing money 20, 30 years ago. They had a monopoly on kind of like mobile phones. And I remember sitting in a meeting once upon a time about 15 years ago, and there was a discussion about charging for text messages. Now, I'm sure there's a load of people listening to this that probably are going like, you used to have to pay per text message. And I remember sitting there going like, it's like, we're creating barriers here, and we're not innovating. We're trying to sweat an asset while the disruptor's happening. And the telecommunications sector, I feel we're just trying to make too much money without being innovative, you know what I mean? And and look at the large telcos, or look at a lot of the telcos don't exist today because all they were doing was generating revenue and not necessarily being innovative. So I think there's a lot of traditional sectors like banking, finance as well. You know, it's like I leave that there though.
Okay, let's move on to the other question there and see, do you think that a standards framework for AI could limit innovation and stifle creativity? And if so, what would you suggest to manage bad actors in the AI space? Would anybody like to jump in for that one?
Don't mind having a go at it. Just given the background in artificial intelligence from years ago. So earlier this year, I was in San Francisco, and you know, there was a question like this posed to the audience. So I was with it was the European Commissioner for Innovation, let's say, and a question had been raised about, does European regulation stifle innovation? And somebody in the audience, an American person who'd moved from the States to Europe, gave a really interesting perspective on this. Like, when you put regulation in place, you're putting kind of like what may be perceived as barriers, right? But it is for the protection of society. You know, it's for the usually, and I think that's what regulation attempts to do, is to protect people from bad actors. But this person said, that having regulation in place actually means you have to be a bit more creative. You have to work within the confines. It's not just a blank sheet. You have to work within the confines of that regulation. So I would say it doesn't stifle innovation. I'd say it puts a kind of like some I don't want to say barriers is not the right word, but puts different things on the blank sheet before you start to protect society.
Okay, yeah. So we're getting to the end of our webinar. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists for attending today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think that we could be talking about this for hours and hours and hours. There's just so much, that we could talk about in relation to this. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for our audience. Unfortunately, we're not able to answer all of the questions, but if you're interested in this topic, innovation and entrepreneurship, I really strongly encourage you to check our Level 9 postgraduate certificates in innovation and enterprise development. That we're going to be offering it in 2 locations starting in January next year. So we have it in Dublin and in Naas in Kildare. So applications are open. Have a look at our website, and you have plenty of opportunity to discuss topics such as this in our innovation and enterprise development program. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ken. And thank you, Jess. And have a lovely afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Paula.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheerio.
Bye.